I guess we have around 22, 23 people in the call today, so we'll start with them. So I think we discussed SWOT analysis and pest analysis last week, but because of the importance it has on the activity, like the assignment, I wanted to cover them again. So SWOT analysis and pest analysis are done when you are taking a project or when you're prioritizing a project to understand your opportunities and threats so that you can plan for them. Also, you would know your strengths and weaknesses, so you know how you can approach the project. So, as I mentioned last week, even on the assignment, what we expect is for you to do a SWOT analysis on the move and to justify the move with the SWOT analysis. So you need to explain the strengths of the country that you're planning to move the operations to, the weaknesses your organization is facing and how you are planning to overcome them. Opportunities with the new territory that you would gain, and what are possible threats. And again, for threats, you need to have a potential plan to overcome those threats or to work around those threats. So SWOT analysis is used to understand the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, so that you could take a project or not. And then you have pest analysis. Again, I covered this last week, but I thought of reiterating today also. So pestle refers to political, economical, social, technological, environmental, and legal aspects. So under each section, you need to explain the benefits, disadvantages with regard to that angle. Like so, political, the government policies, the political stability, the corruption, the tax policies, the labor laws, trade restrictions, all that would go on the political. Economic growth, exchange rate, interest rates, inflation rates, disposable income, and unemployment rate. So unemployment rate again is important to see, what kind of a workforce you may have in the new territory. Social, population growth rate, age distribution, career attitudes, safety emphasis, health consciousness, lifestyle attitude, and cultural barriers. So we discussed last week also, if you're planning to have a beef burger joint in India, how that should be looked into. So, with different social aspects, you need to see what kind of things you need to do to overcome those social barriers. Technology, incentives, levels of innovation, automation, possible R&D activity, and overall technological awareness of the people. Under environment, you can talk about weather, the climate, the different environmental policies, the pressure from different NGOs, climate change aspects. Like for example, if you're planning to have airport in sea area, you need to talk about the wildlife, how you're planning to move the wildlife into another safe location, things like that. Right? Under legal, discrimination laws, antitrust laws, employment issues, consumer protection laws, copyright and patent laws, and health and safety laws, all that you need to discuss. And with a pest analysis, you can again justify the move of your operations to a new territory. Is this clear, guys, up until now? I just want to reiterate on SWOT and pestle because it's quite important to the assignment.
Yes.
All right, good. Then moving on, today we would talk about risk management, stakeholder management, and schedule management in detail. We would slightly cover certain aspects of cost management and quality management as well. So what is a risk, guys? So is risk a negative thing? What do you think? I would like you guys to participate, honestly.
No.
Risk is not a negative thing. Okay.
No.
Why? So what is a risk?
Risk is exciting.
It is exciting. Okay. If you are to define a risk, how would you define a risk? Any guesses, guys?
Trying to do something which is not clear enough. Something like that.
Okay.
An opportunity where like you could get both the outcomes with it.
Sorry.
It's high, the return is also high.
Um, risk is high, return is high. Okay. Good. So I think all of you have given a good enough answer, but not quite there. So risk is something which would happen in the future. So it is a potential thing which is may or may not happen. So risk has a impact and a likelihood. It's something uncertain that might or might not happen in the future. So you have positive risks and negative risks. So risk is not necessarily negative. What might happen in the future, which is positive, it's a positive risk. It's also known as an opportunity. What might happen in the future, which is a negative risk, it would impact you adversely, and it is also known as a threat. So the objective of risk management is to increase the possibility and the impact of positive events and decrease the probability and impact of negative events in the project. So we would see how we are going to do that. So what's the difference between a risk and an issue, guys, for you? How would
This
you?
can be something futuristic and issue is
Perfect.
past.
Okay, perfect. So issue, it's something which has already happened. Risk is always in the future. That's the main difference between a risk and issue. Once you identify a risk, you need to analyze the risk and you need to prepare a risk response plan because it may or may not happen. Whereas when it comes to an issue, once the issue is identified, you need to analyze the impact and it needs to resolve or it needs to escalate because it's already happened. So there's no time for planning. You need to resolve it or escalate it. When it comes to risk management process, we have a 7-step process. First thing in project management, under risk management governance, what we talk about is planning risk management process. So in planning risk management, you would plan for manage risk. How you would manage risk, how you would identify risk, how would you categorize risks, what kind of qualitative risk management strategies you would implement, what kind of quantitative risk management strategies you would implement, who would sit on the risk prioritization committee, how would you escalate risks. Likewise, you have a plan for risk management. This is step number 1. Then step number 2 is identifying risk. So you in the project you do a brainstorming or you talk to experts and then you discuss all the risks, you identify the risks. Output of this process is a risk register. In a while we would I would show you a risk register and the use of it. So basically, in a risk register, you have all the risks, probability of that happening, impact. Uh, so you have the risk exposure, which is probability times impact, mitigation strategy, contingency plan, risk owner, all that you have. Then you have perform qualitative risk analysis. So what is a qualitative risk analysis? Qualitative risk analysis is a high level risk analysis strategy that you use to prioritize key risks. Now, in a very complex project, if you have 1,000 risks, you can't possibly go through all the 1,000 risks on a daily basis. So you prioritize risks. You use a risk matrix to prioritize these risks. You give them values like high, medium, low, and then you say, okay, these are my high risks. These I manage. These I will manage closely. These are my medium risks. I would put a plan and I would keep them aside. These are my low risks. These are probably not would not happen, but I've logged them. I would monitor them quarterly, something like that. And then you have a quantitative risk analysis. Quantitative risk analysis you do on the important risks or the risks that you need to come up with a strategy, mitigation plan, risks that you need to work. So for those risks, you would do impact exposure analysis, and then you would implement a contingency strategy, mitigation plan, and then you would continuously progress to monitor them. Then you have planned risk response. Planned risk response is, like I said, having a plan to mitigate or have a contingency plan for that risk. How would you mitigate? So when it comes to risk responses, there are 7 different types. You have risk avoidance, risk acceptance, risk mitigation, risk sharing, risk exploiting. Likewise, you have different risk response strategy. We would talk about them in a bit as well. And once you have a plan of risk response, then you would implement it. And once you implement it, still it would not stop there. You would continue to monitor that risk, monitor the trend, whether the risk trend is deteriorating or whether it's positively changing. So you would monitor it and then do necessary corrective or reactive actions. Okay, clear?
Yeah.
Let's move on. So this is a risk matrix. Okay, so for each risk, you have your likelihood, which is the probability. You have the consequence or the impact. So probability multiplied by impact is your risk exposure. So a risk that is almost certain to happen, almost certain to materialize, but has a very less impact, has a risk exposure of 5 times 1. Risk which is almost likely to happen, but has a minor impact, has a risk exposure of 10, 5 times 2, which is a high risk. Risk which is almost certain and moderate would have a impact of 15. Major would have 20, catastrophic would have 25. So risk metrics would have risk ratings from 1 to 25, and you can categorize your risks in different regions. So anything below 3 risk exposure rating, we've highlighted it as low risks. Not necessarily need to monitor them closely. Anything between 4 to 6 are my moderate risks. 4, 5, 4, 6, 6, 4, 5. Anything from 8 to 12 are my high risks. So you have them in orange. And anything beyond 15 are my extreme risks that I need to monitor closely. Right. So this gives a risk categorization. It gives, at a glance, you can easily identify the more important risks versus less important risks, so that you can focus your energy and effort in the right risks, so that it's beneficial for you as well as the organization. Okay. So even on your assignment, you can create a risk matrix to understand which risks are more important, which risks are less important. And all these risks would be in risk register. So risk register has some information. I'll put them here. So you have the risk ID, date the risk was raised, the description of the risk, likelihood, which is probability, impact, the risk exposure, which is probability times impact. Then you have a risk owner. For each risk, you have a risk owner. So you give the ownership of that risk to that person. Mitigation plan. So what's your mitigation action? What is the action you would do to avoid that risk happening? It's the mitigation plan. What is the contingency strategy? Contingency strategy is in case that risk materializes into an issue, what would you do? Progress on actions. So what have you done so far? What's the outcome? How has the risk evolved? You put comments here. And then your status. Is it open? Is the risk waiting for something? Is the risk closed? So likewise, you need to have a risk register for all the risks in your project as well. Okay. Is it clear, guys? Are there any questions?
So in our presentation, we need to present this slide.
Yes. So you need to have in your presentation, you need to have a risk priority matrix, or I mean, not necessarily a priority matrix, but you need to have a risk register. So you need to explain what are the risks you see in the project, how you are planning to overcome them, if that risk materializes, what's the impact, and how you are going to manage it. Does that answer your question, Ikram?
Yeah, thank you.
Also, it would be good to talk about risk metrics, so that, like, you would explain how you prioritize risks. Not all the risks would be treated in the same way, right? So some risks you would monitor closely, some risks you would not monitor that closely. So you need to explain it with the risk metrics. Okay. So now you have risk response strategies. So you have four risk response strategies for threats and four risk response strategies for opportunities. Threats, as I said, are negative risks. So first course of action is avoid. See if you can avoid a threat, how you can eliminate the cause of the risk. If you can't avoid a threat, you try to mitigate it. Mitigation is reducing the probability or the impact of the risk. Again, sometimes you can't mitigate also the risk. Then you see if you can transfer the risk. Instead of you taking the toll, if you can transfer the failing everything, you have to accept the risk. So let's take an example. Now let's take everyone has a car, right? Like, so when you are driving the car, there is always a threat of you meeting with an accident. Okay. So how would you avoid it? You would keep the car parked at home and you would use public transport. So you would avoid the accident happening to your personal vehicle. So that's a risk avoidance strategy. How would you mitigate that risk? Can someone tell me?
Drive slow.
Sorry?
Drive slow.
Yes, driving slow. Slow driving is one way. Not driving in the traffic times would be another way. So you reduce the impact or the probability of that risk happening. Then third option is to transfer. How would you transfer the risk?
Insuring.
Exactly. You insure it, you use it as normal. So if something happens, insurance would take the toll. Or you accept it. Accepting means you can't do anything about it. You know that can happen. You don't do any insurance. You you accept it, face the consequences if that materializes. So you drive the car without insurance. If something happens, you take the toll on it. So that's accepted. So this is the 4 risk response strategies for negative risks. So what are the risk response strategies for positive risks? Would you avoid the positive risk? Guys, would you avoid a positive risk? No, right? So see what are the risk response strategies for positive risks? Exploit. You don't avoid, you exploit. Exploiting meaning you ensure that opportunity would be realized. You make sure that would happen. Enhance. You increase the chances of that happening. Share. You share with another person the responsibility. So the benefits you both would share. Accept. Accept is the only common strategy for both threats and opportunities. There's nothing you can do. You only thing you can do is hope and wait. Accept. So exploiting is ensuring the opportunity is realized. So you work hard to materialize it. Enhance is the opposite of mitigation. You increase the probability or the impact of that opportunity. Share like the joint venture. You share the responsibility. Sometimes you don't have enough money to invest, so you share it with someone. Rather than not having anything, you say, let's have 50%. So that's sharing. Accepting is accepting as it is. I hope it's clear for all of you.
Kavini, can you give a practical example on what are positive risks?
Okay. So positive risks would be like, for example, you're planning to buy a car. Okay. What would you do? Sometimes you would hear generally this is something very relatable. So that's why I'm telling this. Um, with the budget, there would be a reduction of tax prices in the cars. So you would not buy the car immediately. You would wait until the budget is over. So you would be able to benefit from that positive risk. Or if you're planning to sell the car, you would wait till the budget is over so you can sell it at a higher price. So exploiting. Sometimes like in a project, you need to do certain things, but there might be a lack of skill in certain resources, or there might with people you can deliver work, right? So in order to maximize it, maximize the probability, you keep motivating them. So enhancing the probability of them doing something better. Other way, it's also true. It can act as a negative risk if you don't motivate them properly. Does that answer your question on positive risks?
Yeah, I had a somewhat understand.
Okay, sure, Nadesh. Then we discussed this last week, risk over time, from initiation to closing phase, the impact of risk sorry, not the impact of risk, the risk to the project would decrease. Um, in the initial stage, it's easy to pull the plug because you have not invested much. But as you go along, as you invest more and more money in the project, the risk for the project decreases because everyone would be committed to the project. Impact of risk over time shares the other way around. In the initial stage, if a risk materializes, impact is less. But at the closing stage, if a risk materializes, impact is high. So impact of risk over time increases. Clear? Okay. Now we would go into stakeholder management. So stakeholder management is also very important because in a project you would work with different stakeholders. Each stakeholder has different needs, different requirements, and they need to be managed in a different way. So you need to understand your stakeholders, understand their power, understand their influence, and understand their interest, and have a mechanism to manage those stakeholders. So we would talk about a 4-step process in managing your stakeholders. First step is to identify stakeholders. Now, in your project also, you would have to have a stakeholder management strategy and a stakeholder management plan. So who are your stakeholders? If you're moving your operations from Sri Lanka to Nairobi, in Kenya, like, your stakeholders would be the CEO, the C-level management of your current business, the managing director you're appointing in Kenya, the government in Kenya, because you would have to obey for their rules and regulations. If you're planning to build a plant, factory, the construction project team, your team members, your distributors, your distributor network, your customers, all that would be your stakeholders. So you need to identify all the stakeholders. That's step number 1. Step number 2, you have to prioritize your stakeholders. So your stakeholders would also have power and interest. So you would have stakeholders who have high power, high interest. These stakeholders, you would manage them closely. For example, you're managing direct in Nairobi, your C-level management here, the project manager of that project, high power, high influence. Then you have high power, low interest. These people you would keep satisfied, like government authorities. They have high power, but not necessarily very interested in your project, but you have to obey the government rules and regulations. So those things you would keep satisfied. Then you have low power, high interest stakeholders. These you would keep informed, like your project team. Then you have low power, low interest. Your customers, your distributors might be falling under this section. So these you would monitor. So with different stakeholders, you need to have this stakeholder management strategy and prioritization. Clear? Okay. Once you have the prioritized stakeholders, step number 3 is to understand the stakeholders. You need to ask your questions. What interest do they have in the outcome of your work? Is it positive or is it negative? How are they likely to feel about or react to your project? Is it positive? Is it negative? What is the best way to engage or communicate with them? For example, if you decide to have a daily sync up with your CEO, he would not like it. He would say, I would like a bi-weekly call with you to understand the project progress. But with the project team, you need to have a daily meeting. So with regard to different stakeholders, the communication strategy you implement with them are different. What motivates them? What is in it for them from the project? What information do they want to hear from the project? Do they want to hear the minor risks, or do they want to hear the critical risks? For example, if you are reporting to the CEO, you don't need to inform all the nitty-gritty small details of the project to them. They need a 360 view, a high-level view. So you need to understand what motivates them, what information they need, what would encourage them to support your project. You need to understand what's in it for them, what's in stake. So you know what would encourage them to motivate or support the project. Apart from this, who else can be influenced by else can be influenced by their opinions? So that's also important, because sometimes these stakeholders group and act as a team. So you need to understand how they can group also. Sometimes even in the project, like for example, if you have to um, if you have to break a negative news, like we are behind schedule, we would have to work in this weekend to cover it up. How would you break it up? You would analyze the resources, you would analyze the team members, you would get the support from key stakeholders, and then you would break out so that it would be easily acceptable by the team. Now, when you have strikes and all, government doesn't talk with everyone, right? They talk to the union leader. Why? Because people are gathered around the union leader. So they influence the union leader influence the other members. So likewise, how stakeholders are grouped, that's important. So you need to have a stakeholder register also. You need to have the stakeholders, their designation, the role in the project, what is the type of stakeholder, whether they are external stakeholders, internal stakeholders, what kind of communication plan you are planning to have, what are the expectations, how they would influence the project, whether they are influencing, they're supporting, they are not supportive, all that you should mention so that you can measure the progress. Now you identified the stakeholders, you prioritize them, you understood the stakeholders. Final step is to manage them. So you create an action plan and then you roll it out. That's managing the stakeholders. Is it clear, guys? Any questions on stakeholder management? Okay. So we have some constructive roles in a team, some destructive roles. Initiator, information seeker, information giver, encourager, clarifier, harmonizer, summarizer. All of these are constructive roles. Who is initiator? Who would always initiate things? Are initiators. Information seekers are people who would always look for information. That is also a good thing. It's a positive thing now. Information giver, on the other hand, are all people who are willing to provide information. Encouragers are the people who would encourage in the team. Clarifiers, even though they know it, they would clarify it for the benefit of the others. Harmonizers, when a team has ups and downs, they are the people who would harmonize the team unity. And you have summarizers. Even you might have noticed there are people who would always summarize, who would always document them or briefly explain the overall whatever items we discussed. So that's also a good positive role. Same way you have destructive team roles: aggressor, blocker, withdraw, attention seeker, topic jumper, dominator, devil's advocate. So apart from the devil's advocate is debatable whether it's constructive or destructive. All others are clearly destructive team roles. Aggressor, he's someone who is aggressive, who exploits things in the project. Blocker is always someone who would look at it on a pessimistic angle, who would always tell this is blocked because of that, rather than arranging workarounds. Withdrawer is someone who would always, that one person who would always be away from the group, who would not participate in the teamwork. Is the withdrawer. Attention seeker, there are people who always wants to seek attention. Again, it's not a positive team role, because team members would have to invest time on these people. Topic jumper, in a meeting you would always have some people who would jump from one topic to another. That's also not good. Dominator are people who would dominate rather than, like, listening to others' opinions, who would dominate. Devil's advocate are people who would point out all the risks in things. It's destructive in a way, because it brings it demotivates the team morale, but it's constructive because it allows you to identify the issues in the project or the risks in the project, so you can have a contingency or a mitigation plan. But because it demotivates, we generally categorize it as a destructive team role. Okay. And then stakeholder influence over time, as the project progresses, as the time goes from initiation to closure, stakeholder influence also decreases. So we discussed this last week also, right? So do you guys have any question on stakeholder management? Okay, no questions. We'll go to schedule management then. In schedule management, I'm going to explain you the network analysis. Okay. So this is very important. Network analysis is done to identify the critical path. What is the critical path? Can someone tell me what is the critical path? Guys, any guesses?
Link between
not necessarily. I mean, there's a link between all of these tasks, but critical path is the path where you don't have any breathing space. Meaning, if that task gets delayed, your entire project would get delayed. So with this example, I would explain you the critical path, and I would explain this further, okay? Now, I've put different tasks, and these are the durations: 10, 25, 10, 20, 15, 15, and 5. Okay, so your starting activity is A, and once A is done, you can do B, H, and F. Once B is done, you can do C. In order for you to do G, you need F and C both be completed. D needs to be done only after C is completed. In order for you to start E, H needs to complete, D needs to complete, G needs to complete. So this is the relationship in the activities. Okay. Now what we do is we do a forward pass and a backward pass. What is a forward pass? You go from your left to right, from start to end. You put the early start dates. So you assume your task A would start on the first day of the project. It has duration of 10, so it will finish on the 10th day. What is the earliest start date for B? B needs to start once A finishes. So A finish on 10, B can start on 11th, right? 20 days, so it would go until 30. What's the earliest start date for C? Guys?
days after.
Yes, so not 30 days. 31 would be the earliest start for C, and it would go to 35. Then, in order for D to start, you need C completed, right? So D would start on 36th day. It would go for 10 more days. So it would go until 45. Then, what is the earliest start date for E?
We need to calculate E and H as well.
Sorry?
36.
It was not clear, Ishan.
should we calculate FT and H, or can we start the project, like for an example,
35.
give it until others start, whereas this at least a portion can be start after?
Exactly, what you said is right. In order to understand the earliest start date of E, you need to calculate F, T, and H.
Or
Okay, so you would do.
then it will be 16. No?
Sorry.
Is it 16? Yes, then.
So you would
Then
do
16.
if first duration is 15. So earliest start date is 11. It would go to 25. Then you would do G. G's earliest start date is 36, because even though this finishes by 25th day, C finishes only after 35 days. So in
Right.
order for you to start, you need both of them completed. So
Right.
36th day you should start, 5 days,
Oh.
and then you have H. H can start on 11 and would go till 25. So earliest start date for E now is 46, right? 46 to 65, 20 days. Is that clear, guys?
Yeah, now this is my second question I actually asked.
Okay.
Now, according to this, what we have mapped is all three need to be completed. Can E start the process after D is over, or after G is over, because after H is over, because H is with 25 days.
Yes.
Can he start it, or do we have to wait until D and G finish?
In this example, you have to wait till H and G are completed. So let me give an example. Okay. It's like this. It's like building a house. So imagine your task E is the second floor slab. Okay. Your task D is your first floor walls. Your task G is the, like, the structure that you need to build so that you can put the concrete. Your task H would be to mix the concrete and make the mixture. So now, in order for you to start E, all of these needs to be completed, right? So in this example, yes, all of them has to be completed. But there can be other examples where things can work parallelly. Okay. So in a project, there are certain activities that you can do parallelly. There are certain activities you can do, you have to do sequentially. So for example, F and H and G are parallel activities. While you're doing B, you can do F and H. While you are doing C, you can do F and H. While you are doing G, you can do D and H. Right? Does that answer your question, Isha?
That example is understood. Thanks.
Okay, great. Now, in order to understand the critical path, next step is to do the backward pass. Backward pass is nothing but now we did early start, early finish. Now we have to do late start, late finish. So for this, you would go from the last task, which is E. From right to left, you would move now. So your latest start date would be 65 in this example, because project finishes on 65th day. So you would put your latest start and latest finish. This would start latest by 65th day. This would finish latest by 65th day. So it needs to start latest by 46th day. So if this needs to start latest by 46th day, what is the latest finish day for this task? 45, right? Even if this finishes on 45th day, this can start on 46th day. Even if this finishes on 45th day, this can start on 46th day. Even if this finishes on 45th day, this can start on 46th day. So you do your late start, late finish. So then for this, you reduce the duration. So your latest start is 41. This latest start is 36. This one's latest start is 31.
So
Now-
one thing is a bit confusing now. Now, if it is later start and finish,
Okay.
since we actually taken 20, how come from 65 it becomes 46? Are we, should it be 45 and it can't, would we count that?
Sorry, I didn't get you.
Since the latest date is actually 65th day,
Okay.
the 20 days behind, shouldn't it be 45th or should it be 46? Is it?
It's how you calculate it. So what I've done is I've considered 46th day as the starting day. So 46th day morning you're starting work, and 65th day, end of 65th day you're finishing work. In that sense, it's 20 days. So what I do is I from latest finish, I subtract the duration and add a 1. Okay. So what is the latest start date of task C? You have 41 here, 36 here. So this has to start latest by 36th in order for project to finish by 65 days. This has to start latest by 41st day. So in that case, task C needs to finish latest by 35th day. So task D can start on 36th day, right? Same way, task F would finish latest by 40th day, so that G can start on 41st day. Similarly, B you have 30-11 and A you have 10-1. So now your critical path, in order to understand the critical path, you need to understand the float. So float is nothing but late start minus early start, or late finish minus early finish. So here 65 minus 65 is 0, 45 minus 45 is 0, 35 minus 35 is 0, 30 minus 30 is 0, 10 minus 10 is 0. 45 minus 40 is 5, so you have a float of 5 for G. 40 minus 25 is 15, you have a float of 15 for F. 45 minus 25 is 20, you have a float of 20 for H, right? So these tasks does not have any float, meaning if your B gets late, your entire project timeline would be delayed. So that is the critical path where you don't have any float. For example, now this, according to the plan, this should start on the 11th day. But who's doing this task falls sick and he comes on 20th day. Can we meet the timeline? Of course we can meet, because there is a float of 15 days. So 10 days delay won't impact. Correct? So is it clear, guys? Do you have any questions on this?
No, that's it.
Okay, perfect. So now once you do the network analysis, you know the critical path. Critical path gives you the shortest duration in which you can deliver the project. So this project can be delivered in 65 days shortest. But if we do all the tasks sequentially, how many days would it take? 10 plus 20, 30, 30 plus 5, 35, 35, 45, 45, 20, 65, 65, 15, 80, 80, 15, 95, 95, 5, 100. 100 days project you are delivering in 65 days. Why you are delivering in 65 days, 100 days project? It's because you are doing things in parallel. Right? F, H, and G, you are doing in parallel. So we will talk about schedule compression techniques. Schedule compression techniques are the techniques used to compress a schedule, shorten the project timeline. One is fast tracking. Fast tracking is doing things in parallel. While F is doing, you do B and C and H. While G is doing, you do D and H. So parallel tasking is known as fast tracking, implementing activities simultaneously. Second method is crashing. Crashing is you put more resources on the critical path. Now, instead of one person doing it for 10 days, you put two people and finish it in 5 days. So you have a positive impact on the project. For example, this has a 20-day duration. You put two resources, do it in 10 days. So instead of 65 days, you would finish it in 55 days. Then. So crashing can only be done on critical path. For example, now for this, instead of one person taking 15 days, you put three people, finish it in 5 days. Does it have impact on the project timeline? No, because it's not on the critical path, right? Other two schedule compression techniques which are not advisable are reduce scope and reduce quality. Sometimes when you can't deliver things, you agree with the customer and you reduce quality. Sometimes because you have to meet the timeline, you compromise on quality. So quality, if you compromise on quality, it would impact your reputation, it might impact as bugs. So these two methods are not recommended, but that would result in schedule compression. Any question on schedule management, sir?
No.
So all clear. Cool. Good. You guys are great.
Yes.
Now cost management. Again, cost management is also very important. You need to have a cost management strategy. So in your assignment, what we want in terms of cost management is a cost breakdown. So high level cost breakdown as to say, okay, for this task, you're going to spend this much money. For task Y, you're going to spend another X amount of dollars. Likewise, for example, now if you're planning to have a plant in Nairobi, what are your costs? Investment on land, $100,000. Building a plant. You can also go for different options, whether you are going to lease a plant there, or you are going to rent something, or you are going to build something of your own. So based on that, you would have a cost again. Let's say $50,000. Then you would have to hire machinery. Again, lease, buy. Are you going to lease them or rent them or buy them? Based on that, you would have like a budget. So you need to have a budget estimate for the complete project. And with that budget, you need to have a return on investment. When are you planning to break even? What is the output of the operations, new operations? What is the income you would get on a monthly basis or a yearly basis? When would you reach break-even stage? So those are the important things I would expect from your assignment, right? In order to come up with the budget estimates, you have to use estimation. So there are multiple estimation techniques. One is expert judgment. Expert judgment is nothing but talking to expert on the field and get their opinion. Then you have analog estimate, parametric estimates. What is parametric estimates? Parametric estimates are a mathematical relationship. So sometimes, like, if you are building a house, the contractor would tell you for a square foot, I would charge you 7,000 rupees. So based on the square foot in your house, you would have to pay them. So it's a parametric estimate. Bottom-up estimate, you granularize all your tasks into smaller parts, and then you estimate all those tasks. Bottom-up estimate is very accurate, but extremely time-consuming and takes a lot of energy. 3-point estimates are another estimate technique where you have average. If for a task you have a most likely case least likely case, and uh, uh, a pessimistic case. So based on optimistic, pessimistic, and most likely, you have your average. So generally, optimistic plus pessimistic estimate times plus 4 times the most likely case divided by 6 would give you the 3-point estimate. You have reserve analysis, you have contingency reserves and management reserves. Contingency reserves are the reserve that project manager has for known risks. There are certain risks in the project. If those risks materializes, in order to implement a risk response plan, you need to have budget. So that is your contingency reserve. Management reserves are the unknown unknowns. So management, the C-level keeps another buffer, generally about 5% of the project value, in order to mitigate unknown risks. Then you have project management estimation software, like you have Microsoft Project, you have Jira. All of those can be used for cost estimating. And then you have vendor bid analysis. Sometimes there are certain things you don't necessarily know the estimate. So what you do, you call for bids. Then based on the bids, you do a vendor bid analysis to land on a realistic cost estimate. Costing and staffing level with regard to the project timeline we discussed last week. From initiation to execution, it would increase. And then from execution to closure, it would decrease. That's pretty much all, like, I wanted to cover today. But we have about 20 more minutes left. So if you have any questions, anything unclear, like, this is the time, like, we can discuss them and, like, sort it out. Anything with regard to the project, assignment, anything I can help you guys with, or anything with regard to the stuff that we discussed.
Hi, once we are completed the assignment, can we share it with you and get a feedback, or how it works?
I can see, but only thing, because it's about 30 people, it would be very difficult to give feedback to everyone. But what you can do is, like, if you have specific questions, like, with regard to what you need to include, or if there are any specific questions, you can email me those questions, or you can give me a call.
Will you be able to share the email address and the number with us?
So what I do with this slide, I put my email ID and my phone number, so that you can reach out.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions, guys? Is this clear? I did it at a slightly faster pace because there was a lot to cover, but I hope it was clear. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to clarify them to you. Okay. If you don't have any questions, we can wrap it up. You have 20 minutes of your day. Thank you, guys. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.